James here. Now, I'm going to talk about probably one of the scariest studies I've ever come across. And the study is basically showing that it's not your fault, but it's definitely your responsibility. So if you ever read Professor David Spath's book, Why Men Behave Badly, right? He cites a study where researchers took 53 convicted inmates, violent inmates in prison, right? Show them a video of a block in New York, like, so you can imagine a block in Johannesburg of where hundreds of people are walking that block. And you ask the inmates, who would you victimize? What's scary is that the inmates came to a consensus of who they would victimize for a lot of reasons, like body science, like long or short strides depending on the person's height. But what's more scary is that subsequent studies showed that women that had been sexually violated before tended to be chosen by these predatory violent males, almost implying that they were given subconscious cues that these predatory males look for. And it really got me thinking of what Dr. David Snyder said, that it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Now, with that, I was reflecting on my experience when I used to run a book club and how people would come to the book club with a bad hand dealt to them, that life dealt with them, right? Like, I remember a guy who came and he was very suicidal, was living with his mom, and just life had just not been his friend. And in a lot of cases, it wasn't the person's fault, right? But the event would happen to them, the traumatic event would happen to them 4 or 5 years before, and they would not do anything to actively change or to remove that traumatic event, but instead they would put on a cloak of victimhood, understandably so, and make that their identity, right? Now, reflecting on this study, it was always amazing how when people come to the book club was about self-developmental books, right? Self-developmental books of how to get your life in order. And individuals who have been through the most craziest chaos would make decisions in that book club session to make a change and go forward and alter their life. And how it was amazing to see how their active participation in changing their lives completely removed all of those negative associations with, let's call it, individuals who do identify with their trauma. And I think that's important. Like, there's a famous story of a lady who got HIV even though she had one sexual partner, that person cheated, and she describes of how she went through hell, right? She went through hell and she was just down. But funny enough, with like a year later, she discovered her status. When she decided to change the narrative of her life and to actively take steps to make order, she opened an HIV NGO that has now touched thousands of women. And I read that and I thought, that's exactly right. When you have experienced a faulty hand of life, right, it is your responsibility to take active steps to get out of that mud and not to necessarily identify with it because of the law of correspondence. As within, so without, because you end up attracting more situations that are negative. You know, Dr. Jordan Peterson says it's either you pick up the cross or the cross falls on you. And funny enough, there's another study that shows that the physiology that you use to face a phobia or to face something you're scared of voluntarily is totally different from the physiology that you would use to face something that you're scared of involuntarily. So in other words, if you choose to face the hardship, if you choose to face the chaos, you're using a different structure or different line of resources. The line of resources that will make you bigger than the problem than you would when the phobia just hits you and you just shrink. And that's something worth knowing. It means step up. It means take active steps. And I know this is quite blunt and a bit too harsh, but I've seen it help a lot of people. And it has personally helped me because that's how I thought about it when I felt like life had given me a horrible hand. Don't let suffering turn into hell by just staying idle in that victimhood. Create a narrative where you're victorious. Lessons.